What is going on tonight, folks? It is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025, and tonight we're going to do a little bit of stargazing. We have a pretty nice fall night sky here in the northeastern U.S. It's a nice mild evening, about 10 degrees Celsius out right now, and we're going to start things off with something very close to home. So right now I'm using a 5-inch Celestron reflector telescope, and I'm literally just taking the eyepiece of my telescope and taping it down to my phone lens. So there's nothing fancy here, but I figured I'd share the night sky with you and show you what it has to offer, because not many people bother to look up. So we're going to start with probably the thing that people are most familiar with in the night sky, and that's the moon. So let's point and go there. It's going to take a couple minutes for me to get it centered. Here we go. And it's pretty much a full moon tonight. Not quite, but it's almost there. It is going to be a supermoon soon, too, actually. Let's see if we can focus this in a little better. Yeah, that's much better. So that is our moon, and it looks really nice. So I have about a 40 times magnification eyepiece on here right now. And if we go ahead and just zoom in on the moon real fast, you can see a lot of cool details here. So a lot of dark and light features. So the darker features on the moon are called maria, and those are basically ancient lava seas that formed when the moon was first forming. Oh, something just zipped across the moon there. It might have been a satellite. That was cool. And so these formed when the moon was first forming, and when the lava solidified, it left these darker patches behind. One of these here is known as the Mare of Tranquility. I'll center that. And that's roughly where the Eagle landed and where Apollo 11 landed when the U.S. landed on the moon in 1969. Some other pretty interesting things about the moon here are some of these craters. And they're large, they're small. This one up here is of note. This one is called Tycho crater. It's one of the largest craters on the moon, one of the most easily visible from Earth. Oh, something else just zipped across. Got a lot of things zipping across the moon tonight. I don't know if these are birds or if they're satellites, but it's still cool nonetheless. So yeah, not quite full. There's still a few shadows here, right along the moon's limb here. So yeah, I mean, this is the best time to take a look at the moon, though, is during a crescent or a quarter, when you have the terminator line, which is the line between night and dark, showing the contrasts between the shadows, and that's when you can really see the craters. So, and another fact about the moon is that the moon is always facing towards us. We always see the same face of the moon because the Earth and the moon are in a 1-to-1 resonance. So you can't really see the dark side of the moon from the Earth. But there are maps available out there that do show you what the dark side of the moon looks like, and I will say it looks like we have the more interesting side of the moon to look at from the Earth. So that's the moon for you. It's one of the most in the entire sky. Center it back in here. And it pretty much takes up the entire field of vision in my telescope. And you can really zoom in and see a lot of great detail if you want to. Here we go. There's Tycho crater again. We'll just kind of keep it there. Now, one thing you might notice is that the moon actually moves across the field of vision a little bit. And that's expected simply because the Earth is rotating. So everything you look at in this telescope, since this telescope that I have is just a manual telescope, I literally just point and shoot at whatever I need to look at. It only shows you you have to, so it only shows you little bits and pieces at a time, and you have to adjust it and account for the Earth's rotation. So anyway, let's move on from our closest celestial neighbor. Right now, the moon is about 220,000 miles away. So it's on the closer side, and like I said before, it's a supermoon. So we'll zoom back out here. And let's move on to our next target. So low on the horizon here, as I move away from the moon, so the moon is currently in the constellation Aries right now, I believe. It's just entering the constellation Aries. And since it's full, there's not a lot of deep sky objects I can take a look at right now. But there are a few things that we can look at in the midst of a full moon. One of them is known as the Seven Sisters, which is in the neighboring constellation of Taurus. And I'm kind of making my way over there now. Always takes a few minutes to get this set up. It's an older telescope that I have. It's about 17 years old, so it's a little squeaky, but it works like a charm. I mean, you saw those pictures of the moon. Those were incredible. So now we're coming into the Seven Sisters. So these are a few of the members of the Pleiades, also known as the Seven Sisters. You can see a couple of them coming into view. See if I go a little further here. Not really. So yeah. There's a few of the stars here in the Seven Sisters. The brightest ones are still trying to focus in. Tweak the focus just a little bit. There we go. So that's pretty sharp. So you can see 3 stars pretty clearly there. And where we're looking is actually near the upper left of the Pleiades. Let's pan down a little bit and see if we can get any more of it. Here's a few more. This is a pretty good look. So the Pleiades is commonly called the Seven Sisters. There is a nebula associated with the Pleiades as well, although there's far too much light pollution here. About 50 miles outside of Manhattan, so the light pollution here is pretty bad, and there's a full moon. But you can still see the stars pretty well. If we zoom in a little, they shine pretty brightly, actually. So the Pleiades is an open cluster. It's about 400 light years from Earth, and it's one of the closest open clusters to the Earth, actually. And an open cluster simply means that stars are willing to come and go as they please. This is an area of recent star formation. Try and focus this in just a little more. I think that's as good as we're going to get it, actually. Yeah, that's pretty good. So this is an area of recent star formation, and it basically is where the stars are born, and then they've just recently left their nebula and are starting to travel through space. Another fun fact about the Pleiades is if any of you drive a Subaru, guess what? The Subaru logo is based off the Seven Sisters. So it's a little fun fact. I personally drive a Subaru. They're good cars. I enjoy them. Here's the 4 brightest members of the Seven Sisters here. As I pan down, there's a few more of them. Those are basically the Seven Sisters. It's one of the brightest star clusters and one of the easiest to find. You can see the Pleiades pretty easily with your naked eye from most locations, unless you're in an urban center. So let us keep going and see what else we can find. Pan down a little bit. We'll head to the next target. There's another star cluster actually in the same constellation, Taurus, which is the Bull. It's one of the zodiac constellations. And there's another star cluster there known as the Hyades. There's Aldebaran right there. It's a rather large orange giant star. Pretty bright. It's magnitude 1, roughly. And I'll put another video out there explaining what the magnitude system is. So, this is an example of one of the brighter stars in the night sky, Aldebaran. Typically, magnitudes, brighter stars have a lower magnitude, and dimmer stars have a higher one. So, magnitude 1 is pretty bright for the night sky. So Aldebaran is a member of the Hyades cluster. So it's about 100 light years away, I believe. But if we keep going... So here's a couple other members of the Hyades. This is 2 stars pretty close to each other, actually. You can actually see another star just coming in and out of view here. See if we can find any other members. Yeah, here's another one. Let's shift gears to a different part of the sky. We're mostly looking in the northeastern part of the sky. The moon is kind of high up right now in the east. So let's shift gears. We'll turn the whole scope around here. And we'll try to look more towards the southeast now. And see if we can capture a planet. So to do this, we need to tilt the scope up. Might take a couple minutes here. Maybe you'll see a couple things in here as I adjust the scope back. All right, here we go. We're getting there. Oh, you kind of saw it flash into view a little bit there. Maybe you know what it is already. So here it is. Here is our first planet. This here is planet Saturn. So, kind of tough to see Saturn right now. Let's zoom in and see if we can resolve it a little better. It's overwhelmingly bright. Let's see if we can lower the exposure slightly so we can see it a little better. That's pretty good. You can kind of see the rings. Nope, doesn't like, there it goes. You can kind of see the rings a little bit here. The rings of Saturn right now are almost perfectly edge on. So they're not going to be really bright and prominent. You know what? We're actually gonna take the eyepiece out here in a moment and see if I can put a higher power eyepiece on so that we can get a better look at Saturn. Let's see if this works. Let's see. Okay, there's something there. You can see that it just needs to be refocused now, but let's see if we can get Saturn locked in. All right, so we'll steady it, adjust it slightly. We'll kind of let Saturn just come into view here. Try to bring the exposure down again. Okay. And there we go. Yeah, Saturn is still overwhelmingly bright, even with the higher power. You can kind of see the rings sticking out a little bit, almost like bumps on the side of Saturn. And that's exactly how Galileo discovered Saturn, actually. Was he basically noted that they look like ears almost on the side of Saturn. So, just a little fun fact about Saturn there. Saturn is the 6th planet from the Sun. Its rings go through a 7-year cycle where they go from being nearly edge on, and they just finished being nearly edge on, and they're slowly opening their way back up. So hopefully in a couple years we'll be able to get a better look at Saturn's rings. But right now we're kind of stuck with this edge on effect with Saturn's rings. Still a really cool planet to look at. A small telescope will see the rings. You may also be able to catch a glimpse of Saturn's moon Titan, which you really can't see right now. We'll drop back down to the lower eyepiece. Alright, here we go. Here we go. Good. Alright, just got to refocus the telescope. There we go. So there's Saturn again. Just got to adjust it here. Let's see, it's still a little early right now. It's only about 8:30 right now. There isn't too much else that's visible on the eastern horizon right now. But maybe I can find something else to look at. Let's see. There is a chance that I'll be able to nab Neptune, but it's very, very hard to find. So for that, we're going to want to turn the exposure up, actually. Of course, now the telescope and the everything is starting to come back out of focus, but that's okay. Saturn again. Let's see if we can adjust it. There we go. So with the exposure turned up, we can try to look for Neptune, but it's going to be very difficult to do so. It's about 4 degrees away from Saturn right now. And for all intents and purposes, everything has to be perfect. All the stars have to align, literally and figuratively, for me to find it. Even just capturing a still image of Neptune was nearly impossible. I don't know how I was able to do it with this, but I managed to do it. It's very challenging. Let's see. Oh, there's a good one. Let's move down a little bit. This is a good target. Another good fall constellation, a fall sky special, rather. It's a rather famous star, actually. This will be the last star of the evening. Here we go. So this is a pretty famous star known as Mira. Mira is a red giant star, and it's also a pretty famous one. It's a cataclysmic variable where it normally shines at about magnitude 2, but it can rapidly become extremely faint. Almost so faint that you wouldn't even be able to see it in a telescope. So right now it's obviously pretty bright, seeing as that I can see it in my phone, but it's one of the more famous stars, and this is part of the constellation Cetus, which is the sea monster constellation. So I'll talk a little bit more about some of the constellations in some of the upcoming videos, but this is a pretty famous star. Zoom in a little bit. Yeah, it's pretty bright right now, as you can see. Nope, doesn't like that zoom. So that's it for tonight. Hope you enjoyed this. Like and subscribe if you want more astronomy content or any content about the sky in general. And just don't be afraid to look up. Have a good night.